I guess starting at the beginning, I was a very physical young man. I was a Washington State champion gymnast. I climbed Mount Rainier, I skied Mount Rainier. My whole sense of self was physical, and I could climb a rope with just my hands really fast. So I thought if I got stuck behind a desk pushing a pencil, I would kill myself. I couldn't live with that. And then when I turned 21, I was diagnosed with this strange disease called rheumatoid arthritis. And in my 20s, I slowly got old in a hurry. I had trouble walking, even with a cane, and I was in a lot of pain, and I lost my ability to travel, to work. But luckily, we live in this age of technology, and I started taking a breakthrough biotechnology drug that gave me another chance at life. And I realized, I don't know if I'll get a third chance at life. I need to live fully now. So the great thing is that I've been able to rebuild my strength. I still have damage from arthritis and total titanium and plastic knees and other issues, but I'm alive and I can change the world. And so having done that once with the X Prize, we want to do it again with aviation.
Tell us about the X Prize, what it is and how did you solve a huge problem?
Yeah, so the origin of the X Prize Foundation was that my dear friend Greg Marinac, who was inspired by my grandfather's book, The Spirit of St. Louis, to take up flying and become a pilot, he was frustrated with his dear friend Peter Diamandis, and he would take up flying and then he'd start another business and he'd get too busy to keep flying. So Greg thought, oh, I'll give him the Spirit of St. Louis book and he'll get inspired to fly again. And he gave him the book, and Peter was reading the book and like, oh, the light bulb went off in his head, and he decided that's what we need to start private space flight, to jumpstart the private space flight industry. We need a prize. And he came up with the idea of offering a huge cash prize for the first privately funded manned space program that could take 2 people up into space, return safely, and do it again within 2 weeks. So being inspired by my grandfather's book, The Spirit of St. Louis, he needed a Lindbergh and he found me. I didn't have much of a life. I was walking with a cane. I had long hair. I wasn't working consistently. And I was old at a young age. But I came to St. Louis. We stood underneath the arch with 20 astronauts and the head of NASA. And all this energy was around creating the private spaceflight industry. It was a crazy thing to do. Completely audacious idea to, one, raise $10 million for a prize, and then to actually have private industry try to solve this issue that everybody knew that only governments could do that kind of a mission. Well, we survived. It took 8 years for the prize to be won, and we probably should have failed. But each board member stepped up in a different way at a different time when we were struggling. And my contribution was on the 75th anniversary of my grandfather's flight to retrace his steps from San Diego, where the Spirit of St. Louis was built, to St. Louis, and then St. Louis to New York in a small single-engine plane, and then I flew solo from New York to Paris in 2002. And we raised $1 million and another $1 million of in-kind sponsorship and 500 million media impressions before social media. That was some sort of feat anyway, all focused on the future of flight. So how are we going to jumpstart the future of flight in space? And we did it. We survived. In 2004, Burt Rutan with Spaceship One, he was backed by Paul Allen of Microsoft, and they flew the Spaceship One into space, returned safely, and did it again. And that jump-started the private spaceflight industry. Now we have Musk and Bezos and Branson trying to sell us tickets to fly to the space station or Mars or wherever. But we did that. And by offering a prize, we smoothed out the rules and regulations. So the Office of Commercial Space Transportation said, yes, we want you to do that in the United States. At first they were like, private ballistic missile trajectories? I don't know. The alternative was we were going to have the competitors launch in Kazakhstan or in Saskatchewan or Woomera, Australia. And so we managed to get that to happen, and we didn't just jumpstart the private spaceflight industry or shift the world's perspective on spaceflight, but we restarted the incentive prize industry. We realized that these prizes that were all over Europe in the early days of aviation. That's why Blériot flew across the English Channel the first time, was for a prize. But we realized we could use these prizes to solve the grand challenges facing humanity. And seeing Spaceship One hanging in the Air and Space Museum next to my grandfather's plane in the X-15, it empowered all of us to know that we could be a part of a small team of people that could shift the way the world thinks about spaceflight. Now we've done it again with oil spill cleanup prizes and the Google Lunar X Prize and the Automotive X Prize for high miles per gallon. So we're doing this. We have over $300 million in prizes at the X Prize, active now, to solve all kinds of problems, including $100+ million in the carbon capture prize that Elon Musk has sponsored. So he was on our board for a long time, and he's done several prizes with us now because he just sees that we have this big lever to create these solutions with. And so when COVID hit, Greg Marinac and I, we're aviation guys, we're geeks, and we see this incredible problem facing us with carbon, right? Aviation, we burn carbon. It's probably one of the hardest industries to decarbonize. And we thought, this is how we need to spend our life energy now. And that is to figure out how to use prizes to make aviation permanently sustainable into the future. So we got early sponsorship from Prince Albert and National Business Aviation Association, and now we've got Gamma and CAFE and all these industry organizations, and we're working on the corporations now, the original equipment manufacturers, because we need to act as a whole industry to come together to solve these issues. And so what we're looking at are these prizes focused on the barriers to achieving widespread availability and adoption to sustainable aviation fuel, for example, and recognizing that if we're transitioning to fuel that we grow from fuel that we suck out of the ground and lightly process, what happens? We need fertilizers to grow that, and we can't let those fertilizers run off into the rivers and water systems, watersheds, or the Gulf of Mexico, for example. So we need to solve those agriculture issues as well, right? And do that in concert so that we're not creating problems, other problems that are worse and hurt us. Looking at it from a holistic biosphere perspective. So that's a long story of how we think we can change the planet. We can make aviation sustainable for our children and grandchildren to be able to realize these benefits.
Thank you, Erik. And why I wanted to speak to Erik is here's a person who has taken on grand challenges, solvable, impossible challenges, and solved them with a team of other wonderful, incredible minds. And the latest one is to take on how do we create this decarbonised future. And this is only one of the prizes that, and the topics. I mean, you guys are looking at, or the X Prize is looking at, solving world hunger, solving clean drinking water for everybody. These are people who are absolutely going for it in terms of huge humanitarian crises with a track record of solving the impossible.
I feel so fortunate to have been exposed because of my Lindbergh heritage and the prize, incentive prize that he went after to fly across the Atlantic, and the leverage that that creates. And now to have worked for 25 years with competitors, the funders of these prizes, and then the actual inner workings of administering those prizes, we all see problems as opportunities. So that shifted my whole perspective at a time when I was disabled, and then I've sort of grown back and gotten a healthy lifestyle back. I'm able to walk, travel around the world again, and work on these problems, and it's infectious. When we get together and do our visioneering, we're all looking at, we're trying to, propose the biggest problems that we have a passion for and get enough momentum going that we can build a prize. If we had unlimited funds, we could do this on our own, but we don't. So we bring in people who care about those issues, whether it's the aviation industry or the heavy machinery industry, the space industry. They help fund those prizes. We administer them, and then we work with all these crazy scientists and innovators, and we try to make a playing field where they can build successful businesses out of it and sell the technology, provide offtake agreements so they can build a successful business that will actually create the intended solutions for that prize.
Do you have a message for people out there, anyone watching this? Is there reason to hope that we can solve some of these incredibly pressing problems? Do you believe there is?
Yeah, I'm not dead yet. You're not dead yet. So focus your passion on those areas, even if they seem impossible, because that's the only way we change the world. And I just feel fortunate to have been exposed to this at a young age, and now having worked through it for the last 20 years, the sky is no longer the limit.